The private dining room at the Gilded Chop House smelled like money. Aged beef, truffle oil, and leather so old it had absorbed decades of expensive cigars. Maya Russo kept her eyes down as she refilled water glasses around the mahogany table, her feet screaming in protest. She'd walked across the Queensboro Bridge that morning to save the $2.90 subway fare, and now, 11 hours into her double shift, every step felt like walking on broken glass. To Sterling Capital, Carter Reynolds raised his scotch, his Yale ring catching the amber light from the crystal chandelier. And to Robert, for having the balls to fire 5,000 parasites and boost our quarterly earnings by 18%. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she poured Pellegrino into Robert Sterling's glass. 5,000 people. 5,000 families who would wake up tomorrow to nothing. She thought of her mother's pill organizer, color-coded by day, each compartment a small fortune they couldn't afford. "It's just business," Robert Sterling said, his voice carrying that particular Manhattan inflection, educated, controlled, utterly devoid of doubt. He was 48 but looked younger, the kind of ageless that came from personal trainers and dermatologists whose offices didn't take insurance. The market rewards efficiency. Maya moved to clear his plate. Wagyu ribeye, barely touched, probably cost more than her weekly groceries. As she reached across the table, Robert unfastened his left cuff link, rolling up his sleeve to check his Patek Philippe. That's when she saw it. The tattoo. Small, minimalist, black ink on the inside of his wrist. 5 stars connected by delicate lines, forming a W shape. Cassiopeia, the Queen constellation. The water pitcher slipped from Maya's hand. She caught it, but water splashed across the white tablecloth. Carter's eyes narrowed with annoyance. "Jesus Christ, sweetheart. You'd think they'd train you people better." Maya barely heard him. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, from 1,000 bedtime stories told in their cramped Jackson Heights apartment. "Your father used to call me his queen. We were too poor for fancy dates, so we'd sit on rooftops and look at the stars. He had Cassiopeia tattooed right here." Her mother would touch her own wrist, where an identical constellation marked her skin. "And he said it would always point him home to me." "Do you?" Maya's voice came out hoarse. She cleared her throat, ignoring Carter's glare. "Do you know where the North Star is?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Robert Sterling's hand froze halfway to his wine glass. His gray eyes, and they were gray, just like hers, locked onto her face for the first time that evening. Actually looked at her, not through her. "What did you say?" His voice was quiet, dangerous. Carter laughed, the sound sharp and ugly. "We pay you to serve, not to flirt, sweetheart. What's your name? I'm going to have a word with your manager." "It's fine, Carter." Robert's words cut through the threat like a knife. He stood abruptly, his 6'2" frame towering over the table. "We're done here. Bill it to the company." He walked past Maya without another glance, leaving her standing there with the water pitcher clutched to her chest like armor, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. The contrast between Manhattan and Queens hit Maya the moment she descended into the subway station at Grand Central. The quiet, temperature-controlled dining room gave way to the screech of metal on metal, the press of bodies, the symphony of a dozen languages shouting into cell phones. The 7 train was packed at 11 p.m., restaurant workers heading home from Manhattan, night shift nurses, delivery drivers with their insulated bags wedged between their knees. Maya grabbed a pole near the door as the train lurched forward, her reflection ghost-like in the scratched window. 24 years old, and she looked 40. Dark circles under eyes the color of storm clouds. Hair pulled back so tight it gave her a headache. The polyester uniform that made her sweat through every shift. She pulled out her phone. The screen cracked from the time she dropped it rushing between jobs. 3 texts from her mother's nurse, vital stable. Finished dialysis at 9. Very tired. Low BP. Maya closed her eyes as the train rattled through the tunnel. Her mother's dialysis sessions had increased from twice a week to 3 times. Each session was 4 hours of Elena's blood being filtered through a machine because her kidneys could no longer do the job. Each session cost money they didn't have, even with Medicaid covering part of it. The medical bills were piled on their kitchen table like a cityscape of debt. $847 for last month's medications. $1,200 for the emergency room visit when Elena's blood pressure had dropped. $5,000 for the ambulance. because apparently even dying was expensive in America. The collection's letters were color-coded, yellow for first notice, pink for second, red for final. Maya had done the math so many times she'd memorized it. Her mother needed a kidney transplant. The waiting list in New York was 8 years long. 8 years of dialysis, of watching Elena grow grayer and weaker. 8 years they didn't have. The train emerged from the tunnel onto the elevated tracks, and suddenly Queens spread out below, the dense tapestry of immigrant neighborhoods, bodega signs in Bengali and Spanish, laundromats and 99-cent stores, and the 24-hour diners where people like Maya grabbed dinner at midnight. In the distance, the Manhattan skyline glittered like a promise no one ever kept. Could it really be him? Her mother had told her the story in pieces over the years, each revelation coming when Maya was old enough to understand another layer of heartbreak. Elena had been 22, working as a waitress at a diner in Brooklyn. Robert had been 23, fresh out of college, working his first analyst job at an investment bank. They'd meet after her shifts, sit on rooftops because neither could afford anything else. He'd called her his queen. They'd gotten matching tattoos from a shop in Alphabet City, paid for with coins saved from tip jars. Then Elena got pregnant. And Robert's parents, old money, the kind that came with trust funds and country clubs, had given her a choice. Take $50,000 and disappear, or they'd report her to IC. Elena had been undocumented then, waiting for her green card application to process. $50,000 seemed like all the money in the world. More importantly, it meant her baby, Maya, would be born an American citizen, safe. So Elena had taken the money and vanished. She'd never told Robert about the pregnancy. She'd let him think she'd chosen money over love, that she was exactly the kind of person his parents said she was. "This is me," Elena had whispered on Maya's 18th birthday, showing her the worn photograph of a young man with kind eyes and a constellation tattooed on his wrist. "Your father. I loved him, but I loved you more." The train screeched to a halt at Junction Boulevard. Maya pushed through the crowd, climbed the stairs to street level, breathed in the smell of halal cart smoke and diesel fumes. Jackson Heights at midnight, still alive, still working, still fighting. She walked the 3 blocks to their apartment building, a 6-story pre-war with crumbling brick and a front door that didn't lock properly. Climbed the 4 flights because the elevator was broken again. Unlocked 3 deadbolts. Inside, the apartment was a medical supply closet masquerading as a home. Boxes of dialysate fluid stacked against the walls. A hospital bed where the couch used to be. The mechanical hum of the oxygen concentrator. And Elena, small under a faded quilt, her skin the color of old newspaper. "Mija." Her mother's voice was paper-thin. "You're home late." Maya dropped her bag and knelt beside the bed. "How are you feeling, Mama?" "Like I've been through a washing machine." Elena managed a smile. "But I'm alive. That counts for something." Her eyes sharpened with concern. "You walked home again, didn't you?" "Maya, it's not safe." "I'm fine, Mama. I saved almost $6 today. That's half a prescription copay." Elena's hand, swollen from the dialysis port, reached for Maya's face. "You shouldn't have to count pennies like that. You should be in school, living in a dorm, going to parties." "I'm finishing my paralegal certification," Maya said firmly. "And I like my job." The lie tasted bitter. "Mija." Elena's voice dropped. "Tell me what's wrong. I can see it in your eyes." Maya sat back on her heels. The apartment was so small that from here she could see into the kitchen, the pile of medical bills, the calendar with dialysis appointments marked in red, the photograph of young Elena and young Robert tucked into the frame of the bathroom mirror. "There was a man at the restaurant tonight." Maya's voice shook despite her best efforts. "He had the tattoo, Mama. The constellation. On his wrist. Exactly where you said it would be." The water glass slipped from Elena's hand. Maya caught it, but not before water spilled across the floor, mixing with the medication scattered on the bedside table. "Mama, what was his name?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "Robert Sterling." The silence that followed was the kind that precedes earthquakes. "Dios mío," Elena breathed. "After all these years. Is it him? Is he my father?" Elena closed her eyes, and when she opened them, they were wet. I hoped you'd never have to know this part. I thought he'd moved on, forgotten." "How do you forget someone you love?" "You don't." Elena's voice cracked. "You bury it under enough years and survival, and you pretend it doesn't still hurt." But Maya, you need to understand, he didn't leave us. I ran away to save you. Maya listened as her mother told the whole story. The deportation threat, the choice between money and safety, the labor and delivery alone in a Bronx hospital, with no one to hold her hand. The decades of raising Maya on her own, always moving, always working, always one emergency away from disaster. But I kept an eye on him, Elena admitted. Sometimes I'd read about him in the business section. Sterling capital, hedge funds, billions of dollars. He became everything his parents wanted him to be. Her voice turned bitter. Everything I wasn't good enough for. Does he know about me? How could he? I disappeared before I started showing. I couldn't risk his parents finding us. Maya, you have to understand, they were powerful people. They could have taken you away from me. They could have deported me and kept you. I couldn't let that happen. Maya stood, pacing the narrow strip of floor between the bed and the medical equipment. He was right there, Mama. Right there. And he has billions of dollars while you're dying because we can't afford. She couldn't finish the sentence. No. Elena's voice was sharp. We don't go to him for money. We don't go to him for anything. We survived without him. We'll keep surviving. Surviving isn't living. The words echoed in the small apartment. Maya pressed her hands to her face, trying to hold back the tears of exhaustion and frustration and fear. Because Elena wasn't surviving. She was slowly dying, her body giving up one organ at a time, and all the part-time jobs and payment plans in the world couldn't stop it. I'm sorry, Maya whispered. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so tired. I know, Mija. I know. Elena held out her arms, and Maya collapsed into them, careful not to jostle the dialysis port. Her mother smelled like antiseptic and lavender lotion, the scent of hospital rooms and home. What do we do now? Maya asked. We do what we've always done. We wake up tomorrow and keep fighting. But as Maya lay in bed that night, staring at the water-stained ceiling of the bedroom she'd slept in all her life, she couldn't stop thinking about Robert Sterling, about the constellation on his wrist, about the fact that her father was alive, successful, powerful, and had no idea she existed. Robert Sterling couldn't concentrate. This was unusual. Robert prided himself on focus, on the ability to compartmentalize. It was what made him successful, the capacity to make decisions based on data rather than emotion, to see numbers instead of people, to treat business as a chess game where empathy was a liability. But he couldn't stop thinking about the girl. The waitress with gray eyes exactly like his own. The impossible question, do you know where the North Star is? It was the code. The stupid, romantic code he and Elena had invented 25 years ago when they were young and poor and convinced that love was enough. They'd been obsessed with astronomy back then, spending hours on Brooklyn rooftops with a used telescope Robert had bought from a pawn shop. Elena would point out constellations while Robert mapped them in a worn notebook. If we ever get separated, Elena had said one night, her head on his shoulder, the city lights drowning out all but the brightest stars, find Cassiopeia. The Queen will always point you to the North Star, and the North Star will point you home to me. He'd gotten the tattoo the next week. So had she. Matching constellations, a promise inked in skin. Then she'd vanished. Robert stood at his office window 50 floors above Hudson Yards, looking out at the Hudson River and the New Jersey skyline beyond. The office was glass and steel, minimalist furniture, abstract art that cost more than most people's houses. Everything designed to project power, control, success. His phone buzzed. Carter, drinks at Per Se tonight? Celebrating the Westfield acquisition. Robert ignored it. Instead, he opened his laptop and did something he hadn't done in decades. He searched for Elena. Nothing. No social media, no public records, no digital footprint at all. It was as if she'd deliberately erased herself from the world he inhabited, which, Robert supposed, she had. He picked up his phone and called his personal attorney. Howard, I need a private investigator. The best you have. Discretion is paramount. Of course, Robert. What kind of situation are we dealing with? I need to find someone. A woman I knew a long time ago. And he hesitated. There might be a daughter. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Howard had handled Robert's 2 divorces, both mercifully childless. This was different territory. I'll send you Marcus Chen's information. Former FBI, very thorough, very quiet. But Robert, are you sure you want to open this door? No, Robert admitted. But I need to know. Marcus Chin called 2 hours later. Mr. Sterling, I understand you need investigative services. I need you to find out everything about Maya Russo. Age approximately 24, works at the Gilded Chop House in Manhattan, likely lives in Queens. And her mother, Elena Russo, formerly Elena Cardenas, approximately 47 years old. Any particular reason? That's not relevant to your investigation. Fair enough. Timeline. Yesterday. It'll cost you. Money isn't the issue. Marcus laughed. I like you already. Give me 48 hours. Robert spent those 48 hours in a state of agitation that was entirely foreign to him. He snapped at his assistant. He lost track during a board meeting. He went to the gym and ran 10 miles on the treadmill, trying to outrun thoughts he'd buried for 25 years. The night Elena had left, he'd come home to his apartment, a studio in Alphabet City they'd shared unofficially, since his parents thought he was living with college friends, to find it empty. No note, no explanation, just the absence of her clothes and the half of the bed that still smelled like her lavender shampoo. He'd filed a missing person report. He'd called every hospital in the 5 boroughs. He'd gone to the diner where she worked, but they said she'd quit without notice. He'd searched for months, becoming increasingly desperate, increasingly angry. Then his father had sat him down in his corner office at Sterling Associates and told him the truth. She took $50,000 and ran. Robert, I'm sorry, but you need to understand. People like that, they see people like us as walking ATMs. She never loved you. She loved what you could give her. Robert had wanted to call him a liar. But the money was gone from the account his father had shown him. Elena was gone. And slowly, year by year, Robert had built armor around the wound. He'd thrown himself into work, into making money, into becoming the kind of man his father respected. He'd married twice, both times to women from appropriate families, both times ending in cordial divorces when it became clear he couldn't give them the emotional intimacy they deserved. He'd convinced himself he didn't care. That Elena had been a youthful mistake, a lesson learned about mixing romance and business, about trusting the wrong people. But he'd never removed the tattoo. Marcus called at exactly 48 hours. I'm sending you an encrypted file. You're going to want to be sitting down when you read it. The file was comprehensive. Maya Russo, born at Bronx Lebanon Hospital on August 15, 2001. Mother, Elena Russo, formerly Cardenas. Father, unknown. No siblings. Attended public schools in Queens, graduated with honors from Newtown High School. 2 years at LaGuardia Community College, currently enrolled in an online paralegal certification program. No criminal record. Credit score, 620, mostly due to medical debt. Employment history, Starbucks barista, 2019 to 2021, currently employed at the Gilded Chop House and a diner in Astoria, working an average of 70 hours per week. Then there was Elena's file. Naturalized citizen, 1999. Multiple jobs over the years, waitress, hotel maid, retail worker. No college education. Currently unemployed due to disability. Diagnosis, end-stage renal disease. 3 dialysis sessions per week at Queens Community Dialysis Center. On the kidney transplant waiting list since 2023. Estimated wait time, 8 to 10 years. Medical debt, $127,000 and counting. Robert stared at the photographs Marcus had included. Maya, walking across the Queensboro Bridge at dawn, wearing the polyester uniform of the Gilded Chop House. Elena, being wheeled out of a dialysis center, her skin gray, her body frail. And one photograph that made Robert's heart stop. Young Elena, maybe 16 or 17, standing in front of a bodega in what looked like Jackson Heights. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her whole face lit up with joy. She looked exactly like Maya. She looked exactly like Robert's mother in the old photographs from his grandmother's estate. He picked up the phone. Marcus, you're sure about the dates? The birth date. Positive. What? Robert did the math in his head. August 2001. 9 months back was November 2000. The month before Elena disappeared. And there's no father listed on the birth certificate. Just says unknown. Common when the mother is single and doesn't want to involve the father. Or when the mother is protecting her child from powerful people who threatened her. Robert hung up and immediately called his lawyer back. Howard, I need you to pull all the financial records from my father's estate. Specifically, any payments made in December 2000 or January 2001. Robert, Your father's been dead for 10 years. I don't care. I need those records. All of them. It took 3 days. When the files arrived, Robert locked himself in his home office, a penthouse on Park Avenue with views that stretched to Central Park, and started reading. There, buried in a spreadsheet of charitable donations and business expenses, was a wire transfer for $50,000 on December 23, 2000. Recipient, Elena Cardenas. Memo, personal matter. Personal matter. Robert felt something inside him crack. His father hadn't just told Elena to leave. He'd paid her to disappear. He'd threatened a young, pregnant, undocumented woman with deportation unless she took money and vanished. And then he'd lied to Robert, told him Elena had chosen money over love, knowing Robert would believe it because his father had never lied to him before. Except he had. About the most important thing in Robert's life. Robert looked at the photograph of Maya again. His daughter, 24 years old and working herself to death trying to save her mother because Robert's father had threatened to destroy their family before it even began. He thought about all the years he'd missed. First steps, first words, first day of school. He thought about Elena raising their daughter alone, working multiple jobs, crossing that bridge every morning to serve people like him. People who treated her like furniture. He thought about Maya looking at him in that restaurant, recognizing the tattoo her mother had told her about in bedtime stories, and Robert had looked right through her. Just another waitress. Just another invisible person. The armor he'd built around his heart didn't just crack. It shattered. Robert stood at his window, looking out at the city lights, and made a decision that would cost him far more than money. The limousine was too big for the narrow streets of Jackson Heights. Robert watched from the back seat as his driver navigated around double-parked cars, halal carts, and crowds of people who didn't move out of the way because they had nowhere to move to. The sidewalks were packed, women in hijabs pushing strollers, men in turbans arguing over domino games, teenagers with headphones and baggy jeans clustered outside bodegas. It was a different world than Manhattan. Louder, more crowded, more alive in a way that made Robert's sterile Park Avenue building seem like a mausoleum. "Sir, we're here," his driver said, pulling up in front of a 6-story brick building that looked like it was held together by graffiti and hope. Robert stepped out onto the sidewalk. A group of kids playing stickball stopped to stare at him. He realized he was wearing a $3,000 suit in a neighborhood where that was probably more than most families' monthly rent. He climbed the front steps, noting the broken lock on the door, the mailboxes pried open, the smell of curry and disinfectant in the stairwell. For flights up, he found apartment 4B. He knocked. Silence. Then footsteps, and Maya's voice, sharp with suspicion. "Who is it?" "Robert Sterling. I need to talk to you." "Go away. Please. Just 5 minutes." "I said go away. We don't want your money or your pity or whatever the hell you're selling." Robert leaned his forehead against the door. Behind it, he could hear the mechanical hum of medical equipment. His daughter was on the other side of this door. The daughter he'd never known existed. The daughter his father had stolen from him. "I'm not here to sell anything," he said quietly. "I'm here to apologize." The door opened a crack. Maya stood there in sweatpants and a Queens College t-shirt, her hair down for the first time since he'd seen her. She looked younger, more vulnerable, and also angrier than any person Robert had ever encountered. "You want to apologize?" Her laugh was bitter. "For what exactly? For being a deadbeat dad? For letting your parents terrorize my mother? For having billions of dollars while she's dying because we can't afford health care? Which part are you sorry for?" "All of it." Robert met her eyes. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know about the pregnancy, about the threats, about any of it until 3 days ago. And I'm supposed to believe that? You're a billionaire. You have resources. If you'd wanted to find us, you would have." "I tried." Robert pulled out his phone and showed her the file Marcus had compiled. "These are missing person reports I filed in 2001. These are the private investigators I hired. These are the search records. I looked for your mother for years, Maya. I thought she'd left me for the money. I didn't know my father had." His voice broke. "I didn't know." Maya stared at the phone screen. Her hand trembled slightly as she scrolled through the documents. "Your father paid mine to disappear," she said finally. "Did you know that?" "I found the wire transfer. $50,000. December 2000. She took it to protect me. Because your parents threatened to have her deported if she didn't. Because she was pregnant and terrified and she thought she was doing the right thing." Maya looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. We could have had a family. I could have had a father. She could have had help, support, someone to. She couldn't finish. I know. Robert felt his own eyes burning. I know, and I'm so sorry. I can't change the past, but I can. We don't want your money, Maya said fiercely. We survived your family once. We'll survive without you now. This isn't about money. It's about. The sound of a crash came from inside the apartment. Maya spun around and ran. Robert followed her through the door without thinking, into the cramped space that smelled like hospitals and home cooking. Elena was on the floor beside the hospital bed, her dialysis port bleeding, her face gray. Mama! Maya dropped to her knees. Don't move. I'm calling 911. No ambulance, Elena gasped. Can't afford. I don't care you need. I'll pay for it. Robert was already on his phone. 911, yes, medical emergency, 37 to 22, Junction Boulevard, apartment 4B. The patient has end-stage renal disease and is bleeding from a dialysis port. Maya looked at him, and for the first time, he didn't see anger in her eyes. Just desperation. Help her, she whispered. Please. Robert knelt beside them, pressing a clean towel to Elena's port to stop the bleeding. He looked at the woman he'd loved 25 years ago, now frail and dying, and felt the weight of all the years they'd lost. I've got you, he told her. I've got you both. I promise. Elena's eyes met his, recognition and fear and hope flickering across her face. Roberto. Her voice was barely a whisper. It's me. I'm here. I'm so sorry I wasn't here before. The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. Robert rode with them to the hospital, holding Maya's hand in the back of the vehicle while paramedics worked on Elena. He made phone calls, pulled strings, used every connection he had. By the time they arrived at Mount Sinai, transferred from the public hospital ER on Robert's order, there was already a team of specialists waiting. Mr. Sterling, the head nephrologist said, pulling Robert aside while Maya sat with her mother in the examination room. Your assistant briefed me on the situation. End-stage renal disease, currently on the transplant list. The waiting time in New York is approximately 8 years. I don't have 8 years. What are the other options? Living donor transplant would be faster, but we'd need to find a match. Family members are often the best candidates. Test me. Test me right now. The doctor nodded. We can do that. But Mr. Sterling, even if you're a match, there are risks. I don't care about the risks. How soon can we do this? Let me get a phlebotomist. Robert gave blood for the compatibility tests, then returned to the waiting room where Maya sat with her head in her hands. He sat down beside her, maintaining a careful distance. Thank you, she said quietly, for paying for all this. We'll pay you back somehow. I don't want to be paid back. We're not a charity case. You're my family. The word felt strange in Robert's mouth. He'd used it so rarely over the years, and never with any real meaning. You're my daughter, Maya. And Elena, his voice caught. I loved her. I never stopped loving her. I just thought she'd stopped loving me. She never did. Maya wiped her eyes. She'd read about you sometimes. In the newspaper, the business section. She'd show me articles. Sterling Capital closes biggest deal of the year. Robert Sterling named to Forbes 400. She'd say, that's your father. He's brilliant. Like she was proud, even after everything. Robert felt something twist in his chest. Did she ever want to reach out? All the time. But she was scared. Your parents were powerful people. She thought if they knew about me, they might try to take me away from her. So she stayed invisible. Worked jobs that didn't require background checks. Kept us moving. Made sure we stayed under the radar. Maya laughed bitterly. We were so good at being invisible that even you couldn't find us. I'm sorry I didn't look harder. Are you? Or are you sorry that your comfortable story got complicated? The question hit Robert like a punch. Because there was truth in it. He'd accepted his father's version of events because it was easier than interrogating it. He'd built a life on the foundation of that lie. The belief that Elena had chosen money over love. That people from her world were fundamentally different from people from his. That class divisions existed for a reason. Both, he admitted. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to question the story I was told. I'm sorry I let my father's prejudices become my own. I'm sorry I built walls so high that even the truth couldn't climb them. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. You look like her, you know. My mom. When she was young. You have the same eyes. You have them too. Yeah. She touched her face as if seeing herself differently. I always wondered who I got them from. A nurse appeared. Ms. Russo? Your mother is stable. You can see her now. Maya stood. At the doorway, she paused and looked back at Robert. You can come too, if you want. Robert followed her into the hospital room. Elena was awake, looking small against the white sheets, IVs running into her arms. When she saw Robert, tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, Roberto. I thought I was protecting her. You were. Robert pulled a chair close to the bed, took her hand carefully, avoiding the four. You were protecting our daughter. I understand that now. And I'm sorry my father put you in a position where you had to choose. I would have chosen her anyway. Elena's voice was fierce despite her weakness. She was always going to be the most important thing. I know. Robert looked at Maya, standing on the other side of the bed. She's extraordinary. You did an amazing job raising her. I did my best. Your best was better than anything I could have done back then. Robert took a shaky breath. I was a different person 25 years ago. Weaker. More concerned with what my parents thought than what was right. If I'd known, if I'd fought harder. We can't change the past, Elena said gently. We can only work with the present we have. Then let me be present now. Let me help. He looked between them. Please. I have resources, connections. The transplant list is 8 years long, but there are other options. Living donors, paired exchanges. We can't afford, Maya started. I'm not asking you to afford anything. I'm asking you to let me do what I should have been doing all along. Taking care of my family. The word hung in the air between them. Family. Such a small word for such a complicated thing. Maya looked at her mother. Elena looked at Robert. And in that look, Robert saw all the years they'd lost, all the love that had never quite died, all the what-ifs that had haunted them both. Okay, Elena whispered. Okay. The contrast between Queens Community Dialysis Center and Mount Sinai's Renal Transplant Institute was the difference between survival and living. Robert had accompanied Maya to one of Elena's regular dialysis sessions before the emergency, and the experience had shaken him in ways his boardroom battles never had. The center was in a basement medical building near the 74th Street Roosevelt Avenue subway station. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant trying to mask something worse. The chairs were plastic, the magazines were from 2019, and the TV was stuck on a cooking show that none of the patients could eat. There were 20 dialysis chairs in rows, separated by thin curtains that did nothing to muffle the sounds. The whir and beep of machines, the low groans of patients in pain, the whispered prayers in Spanish and Bengali and Mandarin. Maya had told him that each chair ran 3 shifts a day, Monday through Saturday. 60 patients cycling through this basement to stay alive. Elena's chair was by the window, which would have been nice except the window faced a brick wall. Maya had taped pictures to the wall, drawings from when she was a kid, postcards of places they'd never been, a photograph of the two of them at Maya's high school graduation. 4 hours, 3 times a week, Maya had explained while they waited for Elena to finish her session. The machine filters her blood because her kidneys can't. Takes out the toxins, the excess fluid. Sometimes her blood pressure drops and she passes out. Sometimes she gets muscle cramps so bad she screams. But it keeps her alive, so? She'd shrugged, but Robert had seen how her hands shook. How much does each session cost? With Medicaid, we pay about $300. Without it, it would be about $5,000. Times 3 sessions a week, times 52 weeks. Maya had done the math so many times she didn't even need to think. We'd be homeless in a month. Now, sitting in the plush waiting room of Mount Sinai's Transplant Institute, surrounded by abstract art and coffee that actually tasted good, Robert understood what money could buy. Not just healthcare, but dignity. Choice. Hope. Dr. Sarah Chun, the head of the transplant program, was a compact woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that Robert appreciated. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Russo, thank you for coming in. She gestured to the comfortable chairs in her private office. No plastic here, no basement windows facing brick walls. I've reviewed Elena's case extensively. The good news is that she's stable enough to be a candidate for transplant. The challenging news is the timeline. 8 years, Maya said flatly. We know. Actually, in New York City, it's closer to 10 years now. The list has gotten longer in the past year. Dr. Chin pulled up a chart on her tablet. Elena is currently ranked at number 4,872. We receive approximately 400 deceased donor kidneys per year in this region. The mathematics are, unfortunately, not in our favor. What about living donors? Robert asked. That's the better option, if we can find a match. Living donor kidneys tend to function better and last longer. Family members are often the best candidates because of genetic similarity. Dr. Chun looked at Robert. Mr. Sterling, I understand you're willing to be tested? I am. The testing process takes several weeks. We need to confirm blood type compatibility, tissue matching, cross-matching to ensure your antibodies won't attack the kidney. Then there are physical and psychological evaluations to ensure you're healthy enough for the surgery and that you understand the risks. What are the risks? For the donor, it's major surgery. There's always a risk of bleeding, infection, blood clots. Long-term, most donors live normal, healthy lives with one kidney, but there is a slightly increased risk of high blood pressure and kidney disease later in life. For the recipient, the main risk is rejection. Elena's immune system might attack the foreign kidney. She'd need to take immunosuppressant drugs for the rest of her life. But she'd be alive, Maya said. Yes, she'd be alive, and with a much better quality of life than dialysis provides. Then test me, Robert said. Today, Dr. Chin nodded. I'll have my team set that up. But Mr. Sterling, I need to be clear. Even if you're a willing donor, you might not be a match. Blood type, tissue type, antibody cross-match. There are many factors that have to align. And if I'm not a match, then we look at other options. There's a paired exchange program. Essentially, if you're willing to donate but can't donate to Elena, we can swap with another donor-recipient pair. You donate to their recipient, their donor donates to Elena. Like a kidney chain, Maya said. Exactly. These chains can involve dozens of people across the country, all donating to help strangers so that their loved ones can receive kidneys. It's become quite effective at reducing wait times for people with living donors. Robert felt something shift in his chest. The idea that he could save Elena by saving a stranger, and trust a stranger to save her in return, felt impossibly hopeful and terrifying. How soon can we start the testing? I'll have my team draw blood today. Results should be back in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks felt like an eternity, but it was better than 8 years. The phlebotomist who drew Robert's blood was a cheerful woman named Keisha who chatted about her daughter's volleyball team while she tied the tourniquet around his arm. This'll just be a little pinch, she said, sliding the needle in with practiced ease. You're doing a wonderful thing, you know. Not many people are willing to donate a kidney. It's for Robert paused, uncertain how to finish. For someone important to me. Well, whoever they are, they're lucky to have you. Robert watched his blood fill vial after vial. 8 in total, each labeled with different codes for different tests. It was strange to think that these little tubes of blood could determine whether he could save Elena's life. After the blood draw, there were more tests. Chest X-ray, EKG, urinalysis, blood pressure, a full medical history that revealed how little attention Robert had paid to his own health over the years. He was 48, worked 80-hour weeks, survived on coffee and expensive scotch, slept 5 hours a night, and exercised only when his personal trainer bullied him into it. You're in decent shape for a hedge fund manager, the nurse practitioner said with a smile. But we'll need to see more comprehensive results before determining if you're healthy enough for surgery. The psychological evaluation was harder than the physical one. Dr. Michael Torres was a transplant psychologist whose job was to determine if Robert was being coerced into donation, if he understood the risks, and if he was emotionally prepared for the process. Tell me about your relationship with Elena, Dr. Torres said. Robert sat in the too comfortable chair and tried to figure out how to explain 25 years of absence. We were in love a long time ago. We lost touch. I recently discovered that she's the mother of my daughter. And you feel obligated to donate because of that. I feel like it's the right thing to do. Those aren't the same thing. Robert was quiet for a moment. No, they're not. But in this case, they're aligned. What if you're not a match? How will you feel? Like I've failed them again. That's a lot of pressure to put on a medical procedure you can't control. I'm aware. Dr. Torres made a note. What does Elena think about this? She's grateful, hesitant, afraid to hope. And your daughter? Maya doesn't trust me. She thinks I'm trying to buy forgiveness. Are you? The question hit Robert hard. Was this donation about saving Elena? or about assuaging his own guilt? Was he doing this for them, or for himself? I don't know, he admitted. Maybe both. But does it matter if the outcome is the same? It matters for your recovery. Donors who give out of obligation rather than genuine desire tend to have more complicated psychological outcomes. Resentment, regret, depression. I won't resent saving her life. What if the transplant fails? What if Elena rejects the kidney or dies on the operating table? Will you blame yourself? Will you blame her? Robert hadn't let himself think about that possibility. I'll deal with that if it happens. That's avoidance, Mr. Sterling, not a coping strategy. Robert rubbed his face. What do you want me to say? That I'm terrified? That I can't sleep because I keep thinking about all the years I lost with my daughter? That I look at Elena and see the woman I loved and the stranger she's become? That I have no idea how to be a father, how to make up for 24 years of absence? Yes, I'm scared. Yes, I might be doing this partially out of guilt. But I'm also doing it because it's right, and because I have the means to help when so many people don't. Is that enough? Dr. Torres smiled gently. Yes, Mr. Sterling. That's enough. Honesty is what I'm looking for. The ability to acknowledge your motivations, even the complicated ones. So I pass. Pending the medical results, yes. You're approved for donation if you're a match. The 2 weeks waiting for results were the longest of Robert's life. He tried to work, but numbers on spreadsheets seemed meaningless when compared to the numbers that mattered. Blood type, tissue match, cross-match percentage. He spent time with Maya, awkward coffee meetings where they circled each other like wary cats. She told him about growing up in Queens, about the public schools where she'd learned to fight and study in equal measure, about working her first job at 14 to help pay for groceries. Mom tried to hide how bad things were. Maya said one afternoon at a coffee shop in Astoria. But I wasn't stupid. I could see the bills piling up, the collection calls. I could hear her crying at night when she thought I was asleep. She stirred her coffee viciously. The American dream, right? Work hard, sacrifice everything, and still drown in debt. It's not supposed to be like that, Robert said quietly. But it is. For millions of people, that's exactly what it's like. And people like you. She stopped herself. Go ahead. Say it. People like you profit from it. You fire 5,000 workers to boost your stock price, and those 5,000 families lose their health care, their homes, their futures. You sit in your Park Avenue penthouse and tell yourself it's just business, but business decisions have human costs. Robert couldn't argue because she was right. He'd spent his entire career treating people as numbers, efficiency as the highest virtue, profit as the only measure of success. He'd never thought about the waitress who served his $500 steak, never considered that she might be walking across a bridge to save subway fare, never imagined that she might be his daughter working herself to death to save her mother. I want to do better, he said. I don't know how, but I want to try. Maya looked at him, and her expression softened slightly. That's a start, I guess. The call from Dr. Chun came on a Wednesday afternoon. Robert was in a meeting with his board of directors, discussing a potential acquisition. When his phone rang with the hospital's number, he answered immediately, ignoring the annoyed looks from his colleagues. Mr. Sterling, this is Dr. Chun. I have your test results. Robert stepped out of the conference room, his heart hammering. And blood type is compatible. You're both O positive, which is excellent. Tissue typing shows 6 antigen matches, which is very good for a non-related donor. However, Robert's stomach dropped. However, the cross-match showed a positive reaction. Elena has antibodies against your tissue type, likely from previous blood transfusions during her dialysis. Those antibodies would attack your kidney, causing immediate rejection. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. You're not a match. The world seemed to tilt. Robert braced himself against the wall. There must be something we can do. Medication to suppress the antibodies, or desensitization protocols exist, but they're risky and not always successful. The safer option is the paired exchange program I mentioned. If you're willing to donate to another recipient, we can find a donor for Elena. How long would that take? It depends on how quickly we can find compatible pairs. Could be weeks, could be months. But it's faster than the deceased donor list. Then do it. Start the process immediately. Are you sure? Donating to a stranger is a significant commitment. I'm sure. Robert hung up and stood in the hallway outside his conference room, trying to process the information. He wasn't a match. After all the tests, all the preparation, all the hope, He couldn't save Elena directly, but he could save someone else. And in saving someone else, he could save her. He called Maya. I'm not a match. But there's another option. I know. Mom's doctor called her. The parrot exchange thing. Maya's voice was thick with tears. You'd really donate to a stranger? For us? Yes. Why? You don't owe us anything. Because it's right. Because I can. Because. Robert paused. Because you're my daughter, and I've already missed 24 years of being your father. I'm not missing the chance to save your mother's life. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Okay. Thank you. Really. After they hung up, Robert went back into the conference room. His board was waiting, impatient to resume the acquisition discussion. Gentlemen, Robert said, I need to postpone this meeting. Something's come up. Carter frowned. Robert, we're on a deadline here. Then miss it. Some things are more important than deals. He walked out, leaving a room full of shocked executives behind him. The kidney exchange program worked like an elaborate puzzle. Somewhere in America, there was another person willing to donate a kidney, but couldn't donate to their intended recipient. That person's kidney would go to Elena. Robert's kidney would go to their recipient. Trust built on blood and tissue and the faith that strangers would keep their promises to other strangers. Dr. Chin's team found a match within 3 weeks. We have a pair in Cleveland, she explained in a video conference with Robert, Maya, and Elena, who was attending from her hospital bed, where she'd been admitted after another complication. The donor is a 42-year-old woman named Jennifer Martinez. Her husband, David, needs a kidney. Your tissue type matches David's. Jennifer's tissue type matches Elena's. If we coordinate the surgeries, we can save both recipients. What if one of us backs out? Maya asked. What if this Jennifer decides she doesn't want to go through with it? The surgeries happen simultaneously in both hospitals. Neither donor is allowed to back out once the process starts. It's binding. We do it this way to protect everyone involved. When Elena's voice was weak but determined. We're scheduling for 3 weeks from now. That gives both donors time to prepare, complete final testing, make arrangements for recovery. 3 weeks. Robert looked at the woman he'd loved, dying in a hospital bed, and the daughter he'd never known, holding her mother's hand like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. I'll be ready, he said. The next 3 weeks were a blur of medical appointments, legal paperwork, and strange conversations with a woman in Cleveland named Jennifer Martinez who was donating her kidney to save her husband's life. Your girlfriend is lucky to have you, Jennifer said during one of their required counseling sessions conducted over video chat. She's not my girlfriend. It's complicated. Jennifer laughed. Honey, if you're giving her a kidney, it stopped being complicated. Robert wanted to argue, but he couldn't. The act of donation was simple even if the circumstances weren't. He also had to prepare his body for surgery. No alcohol for 2 weeks before the procedure. Daily exercise to improve cardiovascular health. A low-sodium diet that made his personal chef quit in frustration. Sleep, actual, restorative sleep instead of the fitful 4 hours he usually managed. Maya helped. She showed up at his penthouse with containers of food, simple, healthy meals that reminded Robert of the kind of cooking Elena used to do in their tiny apartment. Pasta with vegetables, chicken with rice. Nothing fancy, but made with care. Mom used to make this, Maya said, watching Robert eat. When she was feeling well enough to cook. It's good. It's not what you're used to. No, but that's not a bad thing. They ate together in his dining room, which had probably never been used for actual family dinners. The silence was less awkward than it had been at first, more comfortable. Are you scared? Maya asked. About the surgery? Terrified. Me too. She pushed her pasta around her plate. What if something goes wrong? What if you die on the table, and it's my fault because Maya, stop. This is my choice. Nobody's forcing me. But if I hadn't recognized the tattoo, if I hadn't said anything, then your mother would still be dying, and I'd still be living a lie. Robert reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time they'd touched beyond the handshake when they'd met. I'm grateful you recognized it. I'm grateful you had the courage to confront me. Maya's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to have a father. I don't know what that's supposed to look like. I don't know how to be one. We'll figure it out together. The night before the surgery, Robert couldn't sleep. He stood at his window, looking out at Central Park, thinking about the constellation tattooed on his wrist. Cassiopeia, the queen, the pointer to the North Star. The promise he'd made to Elena a lifetime ago. His phone rang. It was Elena, calling from her hospital room. I couldn't sleep, she said. I keep thinking about tomorrow. Me too. Roberto, if something happens, nothing's going to happen. But if it does, I need you to know. I never stopped loving you. I thought about you every day. Every single day. When Maya graduated high school, I imagined you there, proud of her. When she got her first job, I wondered what you'd say. You were always there, even when you weren't. Robert's throat tightened. I'm sorry I wasn't really there. You're here now? That's what matters. Elena, after the surgery, after you've recovered, I'd like to try again. Not to go back to what we were, but to build something new. For Maya's sake, and for ours. I'd like that. He could hear the smile in her voice. But Roberto, you have to understand, I'm not the girl you knew. I'm tired, I'm sick, I'm old. You're 47. I look 60. You look beautiful. She laughed, and it sounded like the Elena he remembered. You always were a terrible liar. I'm not lying. You're still the most beautiful woman I've ever known. They talked until the sun came up, about small things and big things, about the past they'd lost and the future they might still have. When the nurse came to prepare Elena for pre-op, Robert was still on the phone. I'll see you when we wake up, he said. I'll see you then. Robert woke up in stages, awareness returning in waves. Pain in his side. The antiseptic smell of hospital. Voices murmuring somewhere close. Mr. Sterling? Can you hear me? He tried to open his eyes. The light was too bright. He managed to groan. Welcome back. The surgery went perfectly. Your kidney is now saving someone's life in Cleveland. Cleveland. David Martinez. The husband of the woman whose kidney was saving Elena. Elena. Robert's voice came out as a croak. Next room over. Also recovering well. The transplant was successful. Robert let his eyes close again, relief washing over him like a wave. She was alive. The kidney was working. They'd done it. The next few days were a blur of pain medication and physical therapy and medical staff checking his vitals every few hours. But through it all, there was one constant. Maya, sitting beside his bed, reading or working on her paralegal coursework or just holding his hand. You don't have to stay, Robert told her on the second day, when he was coherent enough for conversation. I know, but I want to. She looked up from her textbook. Mom's doing really well. The kidney is functioning perfectly. Her color is already better. The doctors are amazed. And Jennifer's husband? Also doing great, according to the transplant coordinator. Your kidney saved his life. Robert tried to process that. His kidney, a part of his body that he'd never thought about before this, was now inside a stranger in Cleveland, keeping him alive. And a stranger's kidney was inside Elena, giving her a future. It's weird, isn't it? Maya said, reading his expression, that we can do that. Just swap organs like puzzle pieces and save lives. Modern medicine is remarkable. So is sacrifice. Maya set down her textbook. That's what this is, you know. You didn't have to do this. You could have written a check, gotten your name on a hospital wing, felt good about yourself, and moved on. But you gave part of yourself instead. It's just a kidney. People live perfectly normal lives with one kidney. It's not just a kidney. Maya's voice was fierce. It's a piece of you that's saving my mother's life. That's not nothing. Robert didn't know how to respond to that. He'd spent his entire adult life measuring value in dollars, in return on investment, in profit margins. The idea that something he'd given freely, with no expectation of return, could be more valuable than any deal he'd ever closed was foreign to him. Can I see her? He asked. Your mother? The doctors want to keep you both in your separate rooms for another day or two. Make sure there are no complications. But, Maya pulled out her phone. I could call her. Put you on FaceTime. I'd like that. Maya dialed, and a moment later, Elena's face appeared on the screen. She was in a hospital bed identical to Robert's, but her color was better already, more pink than gray. She smiled when she saw him. Hi, Roberto. Hi, Elena. How are you feeling? Like I've been run over by a truck, but in a good way. She laughed. The doctor says the kidney is working beautifully. My creatinine levels are already dropping. That's wonderful. They stared at each other through the phone screen, 25 years collapsing into this moment. Two middle-aged people in hospital beds, connected by blood and tissue, and a daughter who was watching them with cautious hope in her eyes. Thank you, Elena whispered. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for bringing Maya into this world, Robert said. for raising her to be strong and brilliant and brave, for surviving when I wasn't there to help you. We're both here now. That's what matters. Maya held the phone so they could all be in the frame. A strange family portrait taken in fluorescent hospital light, but a family nonetheless. 6 weeks after the surgery, Robert was back at work, but everything felt different. He found himself questioning decisions he would have made automatically before. A proposal to offshore manufacturing to save costs? He thought about the American workers who would lose their jobs, their health care, their futures. A plan to acquire and liquidate a struggling retail chain? He wondered about the employees, the families depending on those paychecks. Carter noticed. "You've gone soft," he said after Robert rejected a particularly aggressive acquisition strategy. "Ever since that medical leave, you've been different. Not in a good way. I've been thinking differently about what success means. Success means profit. Always has, always will. Does it? Because I just gave away a kidney, and I've never felt more successful in my life." Carter stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. Robert, you can't run a hedge fund with that attitude. Our investors expect returns, not charity. Then maybe we need different investors." The conversation ended badly, with Carter storming out and Robert sitting alone in his office, wondering if he was making a huge mistake. But when he looked at the photograph on his desk, Maya and Elena at the hospital, both of them smiling, both of them alive, he knew he was making the right choice. He called Maya that evening. "I need your advice," he said. "That's a first." "What about?" "I'm thinking about changing how Sterling Capital operates. More socially responsible investing, better treatment of workers at the companies we acquire, maybe even a non-profit arm focused on healthcare access. What do you think?" "I think that sounds expensive and probably terrible for your bottom line. But is it the right thing to do?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "Yes, it's the right thing to do. But you'll lose investors. Probably lose Carter, too. Are you ready for that?" "I think so. I've been coasting on other people's definitions of success for too long. It's time I figured out my own." "Dad," she stopped. It was the first time she'd called him that. "Dad, I'm proud of you." The word, "Dad," hit Robert harder than he'd expected. He had to clear his throat before he could respond. "That means more to me than you know." "I know. I'm starting to understand how much things mean." They talked about the changes Robert was planning, the risks and potential rewards. Maya, studying to be a paralegal, had insights into labor law and workers' rights that Robert had never considered. By the end of the call, they had the rough outline of a plan that would transform Sterling Capital from a profit-at-all-cost operation into something more sustainable, more human. The next item on Robert's list was education. He called Maya to his office on a Saturday, when the building was mostly empty. She arrived in jeans and a sweatshirt, looking around the gleaming space with the same skeptical expression she'd had the first time they met. "This is where the magic happens?" she asked. "This is where I've spent most of my waking hours for the past 20 years. Depressing when you put it that way." "A little bit, yeah." Robert pulled out a folder from his desk. "I have a proposal for you." "Oh no. Hear me out. You're brilliant, Maya. Your mother told me you graduated high school with a 4.0, that you've been taking college classes while working full-time, that you want to be a lawyer to fight for people drowning in medical debt. Okay, so go to law school. Full-time. Stop working yourself to death and focus on your education." "I can't afford. I've set up a trust fund. It'll cover tuition, housing, living expenses for 3 years. Enough for you to attend Columbia Law School without having to work." Maya stood up. "No, absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because I'm not going to be your charity case. I'm not going to be the poor daughter you throw money at to assuage your guilt. This isn't about guilt. It's about giving you opportunities you've earned but haven't had access to because of circumstances beyond your control. Circumstances you created. Your father's money is what destroyed my mother's life. And I can't change that." Robert's voice rose to match hers. "I can't undo the past, Maya. I can't give you back the father you should have had, or give Elena back the years she spent struggling alone. But I can help now. I can make sure you don't have to sacrifice your dreams because the system is rigged against people like you. Please, let me do this one thing right." Maya's eyes were wet. "I've worked for everything I have. I've never asked for handouts. This isn't a handout. It's an investment in your future. In the lawyer you're going to become, the cases you're going to win, the people you're going to help. Take the money, go to Columbia, become the kind of lawyer who fights for people drowning in medical debt." Then pay it forward by helping others the way I'm helping you. That's manipulative. That's practical. Maya sat back down, wiping her eyes. I hate that you're making sense. I'm occasionally capable of wisdom. Occasionally. She took the folder, flipped through the trust fund documents. 3 years, full tuition, living expenses. And I get to keep control of how it's spent. Completely. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to free you to pursue what you're meant to do. Maya was quiet for a long time. Finally, she looked up. Okay, but on one condition. Name it. You come to Sunday dinner at Mom's place. Every week. No excuses about work, no canceling last minute. You show up, you eat my cooking, you act like a normal person for 3 hours a week. Can you do that? Robert thought about his usual Sundays. Catching up on work, networking at private club brunches, maybe a round of golf with clients. The idea of commuting to Queens for dinner sounded inconvenient and uncomfortable and absolutely perfect. Every Sunday, he agreed. I'll be there. 1 year later, Robert stood on the rooftop of a brownstone in Brooklyn, watching the sun set over the Manhattan skyline. The building was modest, 3 stories, red brick, a small garden in the back. Elena and Maya had moved in 2 months ago, and Robert had helped with the move, carrying boxes up narrow stairs, assembling furniture, learning what it meant to be part of a family. The burgers are ready. Maya called from the grill. She'd become an enthusiastic, if occasionally hazardous cook, and Sunday dinners had evolved into elaborate experiments in cuisine. Tonight was a classic summer cookout. Burgers, corn on the cob, watermelon, potato salad. Elena emerged from the stairwell carrying a pitcher of lemonade. She moved slowly still, careful not to overdo it, but there was color in her cheeks and light in her eyes. The transplant had given her back her life. Roberto, stop hovering by the edge like you're going to jump, she said, setting down the pitcher. Come eat. Robert joined them at the table Maya had dragged up to the roof. A rickety folding thing from a sidewalk sale, but it worked. They sat together, passing food, arguing about whether tomatoes belonged on burgers, laughing at Maya's story about a particularly difficult professor at Columbia. As the sky darkened, the stars began to appear. Not many. The city lights drowned most of them out, but enough. Robert found himself looking for Cassiopeia out of habit. There, Elena pointed. See the W shape? That's our constellation. The Queen, Maya said. The one that points to the North Star. Robert looked at the 2 women beside him. His family, cobbled together from loss and sacrifice and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other. Elena, still recovering but growing stronger every day. Maya, thriving at Columbia, already talking about internships at legal aid organizations. Both of them alive, healthy here. He looked down at the tattoo on his wrist. For 25 years, it had pointed to a memory, to a past he couldn't change. Now it pointed to something different, a present he was actively building, a future he was fighting to deserve. I'm glad you found me, he said quietly. Maya and Elena looked at him. I'm glad I worked that shift, Maya said. I'm glad you both refused to give up, Elena added. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights compete with the stars. Somewhere in Cleveland, David Martinez was probably sitting down to dinner with Jennifer, his wife who'd given her kidney to a stranger. Somewhere in Queens, families were riding the 7 train home from Manhattan, tired but hopeful. Somewhere in every hospital in America, people were fighting battles against impossible systems, trying to survive in a country that made healthcare a luxury instead of a right. Robert couldn't fix all of it. He couldn't change the system that had nearly killed Elena, that was still killing thousands of people who didn't have a long-lost billionaire father to swoop in with money and connections. But he could change his corner of it. He could run his company differently, invest in healthcare access, support candidates who fought for universal coverage. He could show up for Sunday dinners, be present, be a father. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And sometimes, Robert was learning, something was enough. Maya stood up, started clearing plates. Robert moved to help her, but Elena caught his hand. Stay, she said. Look at the stars with me for a minute. Like old times. Robert sat back down. He took Elena's hand, scarred from years of foreign needles and dialysis ports, but warm and alive, and together they looked up at the sky. Do you think we would have made it? Elena asked. If we'd stayed together back then? I don't know. We were different people. We were kids. Yeah. Kids who loved each other but had no idea how to survive in a world that was determined to keep us apart. And now we have a second chance. Not to go back, but to build something new. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. I'd like that. Maya returned with coffee for three, settling into her chair with the comfortable ease of someone who belonged exactly where she was. They sat together on the roof as the summer night wrapped around them. Three people who'd found their way home through constellations and kidney chains and the stubborn belief that families could be built, broken, and built again. In the distance, the Manhattan skyline glittered like promises, some kept, some broken, some still waiting to be fulfilled. But here, on this Brooklyn rooftop, under the faint light of Cassiopeia, Robert Sterling had everything he needed. He had his queen. He had his daughter. He had a second chance at the life he should have lived all along. And this time, he wasn't going to waste it.